Okay, hello there. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. If you haven't guessed already, my name is Jay Brown. I want to welcome you, especially if you're new, and just say thanks off the bat for choosing to listen. Are you okay? Is everybody okay? Because it seemed like a rough week. Even if you weren't directly affected by some of the things that are happening, it just felt like the mood was horrible, terrible mood this week, and I saw it expressed in all kinds of ways. Even myself, like, getting into arguments, and then just, I don't know. So I don't know. I hope you're doing okay listening to this. And another thing that's sort of, I guess, fitting for the way the week was, those of you who tuned in last week, I was like bubbling over with this excitement about the new studio, right? And I mentioned this social media post, and I talked about the hashtag not a yoga center. Well, turns out that social media post that was sort of celebrating my exuberance and excitement over the possibilities of having a new space to work out of, that also, I don't know, it created a new situation that I did not foresee. Because those who've been listening also know that I've been teaching at several local centers, and I didn't have a conversation with the owners of these yoga centers about me getting this studio space because, frankly, as I mentioned last week, I haven't been thinking about it as a yoga center. It's not like a storefront or like retail business. I think of it more of almost like it's an office and a studio, recording studio, as well as now live streaming. I've been live streaming classes all week from here. And did my teacher's call today. So much fun. I'll mention that later. But I've been thinking of it in this new way as I was discussing. And so I didn't even really think that I needed to have a conversation with the other center owners. There's no competition here. It's not like I have like a bunch of classes. Just right now, just 3 classes a week, me here, and nobody knows about them yet. And the other thing is, I don't have any following at these other centers. I'm new around here. It's not like I'm a senior teacher who've been there for a really long time and have these really well-attended classes, and now I'm going to run off and open a yoga center and get everybody's email address on my way out and steal everybody. That's not anywhere near the case. So you can hear where I'm going, maybe, because I got an email from one of the center owners, and she didn't come out and say that she was upset, which is a weird thing, but she basically just said, I'm taking you off the schedule, like, immediately, like, no notice. So it seemed like, I don't know, maybe she felt threatened, and I didn't intend for that. I wish we could have had a conversation about it, but there doesn't appear to be a conversation to be had about it. And again, as I've been discussing, I've been feeling like maybe the centers aren't necessarily the best place for me to be, and I think the momentum of getting the space is just sort of pointing me in a direction. In any case, it was just a flap that happened this week amidst all the other crappy news and horrible imagery. I also seems like maybe, I don't know, upset somebody felt threatened, and I don't know if that person listens to this. I don't want to mention any names, but if you were listening to this, I wish we could talk about it. I certainly didn't want to step on anybody's toes and didn't think that I was. What are you going to do? What are you going to do, people? What are we going to do? I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do. I have no idea. I know that I'm going to keep doing what I need to do to try to be well and to carry on and to try to keep my wits about me. Because a few times this week I didn't keep them. I mean, nothing bad happened. I didn't say anything I have to regret, but there were just some moments where I went to some places I don't like to go. I've felt a lot of anxiety and, money and shit and just, so I guess that's what you get. It's not like every week can be, hey, wonderful time, got my new studio, woo, yeah. So, stuff doesn't stay there all the time. You get your moments. Got to cherish them. I celebrated it. But now, life carries on, whether we like it or not. So, anyways, I appreciate the opportunity to talk this stuff out. I got a review. Somebody wishes I wasn't so long-winded in the intros. If you're listening right now, I'm sorry, but it's kind of part of the deal. Those who've been around since the very beginning know part of this thing for me is that I would talk to you like this. Hopefully it matters to somebody other than me. And that actually bears a lot of relevance to today's talk with Kristen Fewel, who is a podcast listener who also had a yoga center and makes a big transition into a new model, which again, it runs against the way that it has been done and the way that we are sort of told that we're supposed to do it. But I'm excited for you to hear her talk about her experience. Also, she's got this book that she wrote called The Gift of Awakening, which we talk about. You'll get to hear that today. All right, let me mention that today's episode is sponsored by yoganatomy.net. That is the online educational resource of Leslie Kaminoff and Amy Matthews. I've talked about them before. They've been sponsoring for a little while. They're personal friends of mine. Both Leslie and Amy have been on the podcast. I recommend going back and listening to those episodes. Both of them are teachers of mine. I've studied with them, and I've used their online course. In fact, if you take Leslie's online course, you'll see me because I was in the group that they used when they were filming for the online course. So I'm there asking lots of questions, learning a lot, stuff that I use daily as a teacher. And they're just an invaluable resource. If you want some yoga anatomy learning or even just some deep yoga study, I highly recommend that you go check out yoganatomy.net. I also want to mention some kind of big news. I dropped it last week if you were there. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking to Beryl Bender Birch. And Beryl Bender Birch is the person who coined the phrase, really, power yoga. And we have a really far-reaching, super insightful, fun conversation about how we got where we are in like yoga in the modern world. She tells all kinds of great stories. We hit it off, and I'm just excited to share it with you next week. Lastly, let me drop my stuff real quick. I'm going to be at the Feathered Pipe Ranch July 14th through the 21st. It's a few weeks away, and there was a few people who were signed up to do it, and they had to cancel out last minute. I just think life, shit, getting in the way of people being able to go to a retreat like that, and I totally understand. And I'm sorry to hear stuff's happening. As I started out today, it seems rough all around. I would mention that the people at the Feather Pipe reached out to me and mentioned that there are some scholarship possibilities. So if you were somebody who wanted to go and couldn't for financial reasons, reach out to me because there might be some possibilities to help. That's at the Feathered Pipe Ranch in Helena, Montana. Incredibly special place. July 14th to the 21st. I'm also going to be in Carlisle, Pennsylvania at Anahata Yoga on August 4th. I'm going to be in Falls Church, Virginia at the Yogi Underground, August 10th through 12th. I'm going to be in Rye, New York at Wainwright House, August 26th. You can find out about those gigs and more. You can listen to the archives of this podcast and read my blog and find my online yoga video offerings, DVD and downloads, online workshop Gentle is the New Advanced, and as I was mentioning, the Teacher's Call. And that I actually do feel super excited about in this moment because it was only a few hours ago that I did the first ever beta test of the call, which was fantastic. I got to connect with, I believe it was 4 or 5 live stream subscribers, most of which I had actually met in person before, but 1 or 2 I had not met in person before, and they just know me from my live stream classes. And it was pretty much everything I was hoping for. Really incredible the way we were able to have what to me felt like the same workshop environment, inquiry, the same interaction and like fun learning, play if you were listening last week. It was really great. That was like the part of my day that made things better, was having this opportunity to connect to people. And I'll be giving the details more. It looks like it won't launch until the end of July. Stay tuned, you guys. Super good stuff. All of it could be found at jbrownyoga.com. And if you have been enjoying the podcast and you'd like to show some support, we would so appreciate it. You could go to a blog or podcast page, make a direct donation, or go to Apple Podcasts and iTunes and write a review and give us some stars. Thank you to everyone who does it, even that person who is critical of me. I'm grateful to you, sir, as well. Okay. Other than that, I'll touch base with you on the other side for a moment. For now, I think it's time to get to it. Let's listen to this talk that I had with Kristen Fewel.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Kristen. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. Just settled in. I've got my glass of water. I've got my glasses. I'm sitting in my bedroom. Have a little quiet. My family's in the other room. So, we have some time to chat.
Awesome. And, it's fun. I look back and I noticed, you've been a podcast listener for, a couple years. Because I have, note from you and, a donation you gave me, a couple of years ago.
Yes, I know. I'm a little delinquent on...
No. I didn't bring that up. I just thought, okay, so, it's kind of nice for me because you've been listening to the podcast for a long time.
Yes.
And then, it's funny, recently I wrote that blog post and you wrote that, comment about it. Mm-hmm. And you said...
Because you're spot on.
Well, thanks.
Spot on.
Well, but you said, hey, if you want to talk about, a smaller scale operation that doesn't have to cater to the whims of the industry trends. Hey man, that's what I'm doing.
That is what I'm doing.
And what's amazing and is that since I reached out to you and you scheduled some time, when I first reached out to you, it was because it was on my mind because I myself was out here in the Lehigh Valley trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I was looking around first at the church and using their space, or even went over to the local college and talked to the person at rec services about doing something there. It was trying to find some way to offer a class in some other environment other than the yoga centers that I'm also teaching at still. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, we started looking around and thinking that I was trying to find office spaces or just some kind of alternative space where I could have lower overhead.
Absolutely.
And that's when you dropped that note. And I was like, okay, I want to talk to her. And then, well, this is what I wanted to say. Sorry to be so long-winded. It's just that
no, it's great.
Since we scheduled, I found a space and I signed a lease like yesterday.
I heard your podcast just yesterday. So yeah, I know it's in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Yes, that's right. So
I'm following you.
Oh, you're so sweet. That's cool.
I listen almost every week.
Oh, that's fun. Well, here's the deal. Like, so now I really need to talk to you.
Okay.
Well, mostly just to like hear what you're doing and to, have some camaraderie in this idea that we don't have to play into the conventions.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was really nerve-wracking for me over the last couple of years because, payroll can be high. Mm-hmm. And where you were, rents were really high. Now, where I'm at in a professional center, I'm in Orange County, California, but our rents are really not that high. But I also have a pretty small space. It's only like 900 square feet total. Mm. So our classes have never been big. Our lobby is, medium size. I have a little healing room on the side. So it's just a little 3-room area. But selling memberships was just tedious. And my husband and I talked a couple of years. Actually, every year since about the 3rd year we were open, we kept revisiting, are we going to keep doing this? Is this feasible? Are we growing? Can we keep this up? And it felt like pushing a rock uphill every single year. It was just really, really hard. But there was something about it that I wanted to grow a yoga studio into a healing arts center where it would be more than just yoga. But I didn't know how to do it different. All I saw around me was gym yoga and some independent but larger studios. Like we completely bootstrapped it, like in an industrial center with 16-foot ceilings and inefficient heating and air conditioning. That's where we started out. And we were there for 4 years. But we knew that probably right after year 1, we knew that we needed to move if we were going to continue on into the future. So right about year 4, we found a space even closer to our home. My studio was only 1 block away from my house.
Nice.
I cannot live any closer. But anyway, we found the right space and the rent was right, but we still had a lot of payroll. And we were still trying to stack the schedule and do the Groupon and the deals and the endless promotion and marketing efforts. I even got a sales manager, and she did really good for what we had, but it always felt like such a huge effort. And right about 2 years ago, my husband and I revisited this idea of what if we just got rid of all the group classes? That's the way he put it. And I went, I was in fear because I love our classes. I loved our students. I loved our community. And I thought if we downsized so much or got rid of all our group classes and just did privates, which, by the way, that's most of what I do, is I teach privately. And I went, okay. And that was coming all about the same time that I think Leslie Kaminoff was talking about closing the breathing project, and you were talking about closing down your center. So maybe that's like, what, 1.5 years ago?
Yeah.
I think you were starting the process.
I was talking about it for a little while.
Yeah.
It was a year ago that I actually
went through with
departed it. But yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I put that all together, and I'm reading your blog posts about keeping it small, underground. Now, I don't want to be underground, really. I mean, I'm pretty visible.
I like grassroots more than underground.
Yeah, grassroots. Yeah. So I'm definitely out there. I have a big sign on the front of the building, yoga and healing arts. But right around January of this year, we cut all of our memberships. I mean, we notified everybody in October that in a couple of months we are going to discontinue all memberships. And all of our classes will then be run by teachers that you pay directly. So that if you've invested time with a teacher, we want them to continue to be here. And you pay them directly, they run their classes, they can run as many or as few as they want, they can run workshops, all of that, and it's on a space rental arrangement.
Oh, wow. You did it. You did it. I can't believe you did it.
I did it.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And so, we really have a small group schedule. I would like to see more offerings, but I'm not pushing it. Like, I want the right teachers to be working in my center rather than just grabbing anybody from anywhere and say, please rent my space, because I kind of don't need that. Mm-hmm. So I meet with people privately. I teach them yoga as an individual, I guess the way it's meant to be. Mm-hmm. And I do teach one group class per week in a breath-centered method.
Nice.
That's what I call my stuff, just adaptable breath-centered yoga with meditation. So it's a 90-minute class, 1 day a week. And
adaptable breath-centered yoga. What was that? Breath-centered?
Yes. When somebody asks me what it is that I teach, instead of saying Hatha Vinyasa Krama, and they go, huh? What? Yeah. It's an adaptable, breath-centered yoga with meditation. So they know that they're getting the whole package. They're getting movement, they're getting breath work, and they're getting some guided and sometimes silent meditation at the end of class, and it's the full 90-minute range, that whole experience.
Well, and I so appreciate that, trying to find the words other than Hatha Vinyasa Krama. And, I also love that you started by talking about memberships, because I do think that is a bit of almost kind of a signifier of the center model that you've gotten away from and that I've gotten away from. And it's funny, when I was talking about this like a year and a half ago, like there was people were saying, oh, the center model is dead. And I was like, no, it's not, because I was like fighting to keep mine alive, And I don't know that it is dead, but I do think that there's something very interesting about what you've done, and what I'm hoping to do is almost stepping backwards in a way in the evolution of things. And and the memberships is the example. When I was trying to sell the center, I remember it was the big sticking point, because I'd be in these meetings and they would ask me, how many memberships do you have?
Yeah.
And I would say,
because that's what's sellable.
Well, because it's recurring payments.
Yeah.
And just to make it really clear, what that involves for anybody who's not sure what we're talking about is that's when somebody signs a contract and gives you their credit card information, which means it's going to be a recurring payment until they decide to cancel. Mm-hmm. Which means essentially that the business model works on you profiting off them not coming.
Yeah, and it just feels cringy, doesn't it?
It's horrible. I would do month unlimited cards, but I never did it because it felt to me that I don't want it to be I profit more when people don't come. I want to profit more when people do come.
Yes.
And so I never felt comfortable doing it, and contracts. And so it was a signifier to me that, the yoga centers now, they all have them. They all have online sales, and they all have recurring memberships. Yes.
Yeah, all of them in my area, and I'm the only one now that has stepped away from that I know of. I mean, I know some teachers who work, they teach classes at the park, they teach classes at their church, and the students pay the teachers directly. But all of the centers, some of them do not even offer a drop-in price. You have to do their introductory special, their 2 weeks for $25 or whatever it is that they're offering, their entry offer, and then they sell you a membership right away.
Right.
And, I think that does go to also this idea of kind of downsizing in a sense, because the reason that you had to do that, well, maybe you didn't. Normally the reason why you have to do those promotional things that you were talking about is because you have to get more people in the door just to meet the costs.
Yes.
You have to exploit the teachers and do whatever you can to it's like a high volume business. You got to get people in the door.
Yeah. Except when you don't.
Well, but see, that's the thing. I think there's sometimes people actually don't need to do that, but they think that they do.
Right. I was following what everybody else was doing. Right. But one of my primary teachers, she came to me in the first year or two that I opened my center. And she said, Kristen, this model is not sustainable. She almost said it exactly like that. She said, I want you to entertain the idea of teaching to smaller groups and not making your studio like everybody else's center. It is not going to work for the long term. She prophetically said how things were going to go this direction, but studios don't know how to do that if they don't know how to diversify. They only have their one way of doing things, and I think they're copying the gym model. It's well, if you want to be a gym, be a gym.
Well, that's true, but you see, gyms have all kind of money, VC money and stuff behind them, and Core Power and Yoga Works have that kind of money too. But what was the name of this teacher who prophesized this to you?
Michelle Adams.
Props to Michelle. She knew what was up. Because I think, she's right. And I do think it comes back to something else we said about, it's the overhead. I had the kind of overhead in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, where I really did have to try to play that game. Mm-hmm. If you don't, let's set aside for a moment being the owner of the center. Let's just look at being an individual teacher, which is the situation I'm in now. So I'm teaching at a number of local centers, and most of them fit me in or gave me some slots. One of them even added some later night slots, which they don't normally have around here. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the attendance has been great, maybe 3 to 5 students, I would say, on average. Mm-hmm. And, the way that teachers get paid these days, which is definitely a little bit different. Back in the day, you always got $15 and then $3 a person. Mm-hmm. That used to be a kind of a standard rate for teachers. But now
that's way back there.
That's way back when. I'm the old guy now. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I'm the old guy, and now I'm slow flow. I'm slow flow, which I never was. It seems like slow flow is this catch-all for everybody who doesn't fit into the other stuff.
Yeah.
But in any case, at that, that number of attendance, the way that they're paying people, it's $20 a class or $30 a class. Mm-hmm. And, so it's I make very little money off the actual classes, but I'm live streaming those classes, and I have people who are subscribing, and I'm making way more money off the live stream than I do off the actual classes that I'm streaming.
Wow. And that the whole live streaming, podcast, social media thing, that escapes me entirely.
Well,
I am so much more in a one-on-one or me with a small group type of person. I've tried doing video. I feel so uncomfortable. I just have to be me, and I have to talk to a person.
Yeah. You don't need to do it. I kind of fell into it, and it just.
But I really admire it. I admire that you're able to do that.
I'm trying to navigate it. I'm trying to see if I can utilize these technologies in ways that are in line with my beliefs and what I want to teach. And
you have support. You have technical support. You have people who help you do this, right?
I have one guy, Josh. We got to give Josh all the props. But you know what?
Yay, Josh.
It's yay, Josh. Yes, but I'm also kind of just have an interest and educated myself on this stuff as well. But what I would say is that looking at it, there is also all these things that happen at the centers that I find really disagreeable. That because of the demands and because of the way that people have adopted these models like you did, sometimes when they don't even need to, frankly, because their overhead isn't that high. But when they do that, it is this very extractive and kind of exploitive model. Like we said, with the memberships, it's based on you make more if people don't come, and sometimes you kind of have to squeeze the teachers. So, if I go to the church, or now I've got this space, which is basically, it's an artist space that somebody renovated this whole building, and they're giving out artist spaces for like $1 a square foot.
Ooh,
yeah,
good deal.
Exactly. So I got myself.
So it's your space.
I've got like 660 square feet of beautiful open loft space with big open windows and white walls.
Aww,
and
that sounds really nice.
And the rent is so, like, I can offer like suggested donation classes 4 times a week, and only need 3 to 5 people to show up, and I'll already be making more money and pay for the space.
Wow.
So it's like what this teacher, Michelle, said, that like we have this idea about like having to grow and having to be able to scale up and like adopting these models. But in a way, that little step back, before everybody was getting commercial leases and putting all that pressure on themselves, they were getting artist spaces and doing what you're doing. So it's in a way we're like kind of stepping back a little bit into that, but with new knowledge, because it's not the same world as it was then.
Yeah. No, I've even talked with my husband about like, what if we closed down the center, which again is not very big, but even got a smaller space on the upstairs of the same center, because like I said, most of what I do is meeting with people privately. And then I realized that people kind of want to walk through the door and have an experience. So I that's where the healing arts came in, which is, yes, this is a yoga center, but we also do other things too that are a little, what you might call fringy, like energy work, like Reiki, like, I have some other people come in, someone who does hypnotherapy, someone who does Ayurveda, other Reiki practitioners, so that when you come to my center, you know that you kind of have a choice. You could do yoga training, you could take yoga classes, you could meet with a teacher privately, you could get a Reiki treatment, you could get a guided imagery or a meditation session.
So you're making it really clear that you're offering stuff that's not about sweating and fitness.
Correct. Correct. And what my husband and I figured out, we ran the numbers, and that, and I honestly, Jay, I work part-time. I don't even work full-time. I'm a homeschooling parent. I have 2 kids at home that I homeschool them. And I only have time to work and I'm talking like meeting with clients, about 10 to 12 hours per week. That's it. The other time that I spend at the studio, I'm cleaning it. I'm my own housekeeper. I take care of the place. I make sure that it's clean and organized for the other people who come in to enjoy the space and use the space. I have to do my own marketing, but my sales manager, who was with me from when we did memberships, she still does my newsletter.
Nice.
Like she helps keep me afloat. When I have a vision, I tell her what it is, and she helps make it come true.
See, you need people who have some skills that you don't always have as a yoga teacher or whatever.
Or buys me extra time, that I can spend with my kids, or time to do personal things.
Even someone to bounce stuff off of, like the late night conversations with me and Josh, just like working through stuff is helpful.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, okay. So what I think is interesting is, one, that you made it really clear that you want to distinguish what you're doing at this space from this conventional idea, because that's one of the things I've also noticed is that we talk about gym yoga and how people always in the old days, they went to yoga classes at the gym for different reasons than they went to yoga classes at the yoga center. But you know what? I got to say, having been out of the loop of like the grassroots yoga classes, at least outside of my own center, I have to say that has changed. That now I feel like even at the yoga centers a lot of times, maybe it's because of these like $30 for 30-day type promotions and stuff, but a lot of people who come walking in the door have this expectation about yoga that is more like what people think of when they go to the gym. Like people's idea of it as a fitness thing, or even just as like a contortionist thing. That's like the biggest obstacle I have. And I'd say it used to be maybe, there's that minority of people, 3 or 4 out of 10 who are interested in like some other kind of inquiry into yoga. Mm-hmm. And that's a ratio that was pretty good, like that's fine. 3 to 4 out of 10, that still builds up classes,
Yeah. I remember when you were saying how people would come to class regularly, way back in the day, that your learning of yoga is with consistency, with the same teacher or maybe a couple of teachers. And it's like digging a well and going deep, not going broad. Mm-hmm. And you go deep with that relationship. Mm-hmm. And the healing and the learning is in the relationship with the teacher. And that's what I learned from Michelle Adams, was that I needed to cultivate deeper relationships with people. And that can't be done. That can't be done in that huge group of 15 or 20 people. To me, that feels like a gigantic group. To some teachers, that's like, oh yeah, that's every day. Mm-hmm. I teach 20, 30 people every day. And it's like, isn't that like pressing play on your DVD, and just listening to somebody talk about how to move your arm here and your foot there and breathe here and out. But you can't teach to a person when you have that many people in front of you. And so,
I will say to that is
got to scale it back.
Well, I appreciate that. And I noticed, like I saw on your website, your space sort of said like it holds 10 people on mats comfortably. Is that right?
It's true. Yep. And
my current space, I haven't had a chance to actually like lay the mats out yet, but I estimated around 15 max, maybe a little bit more if we wanted to squeeze. But I don't have like a whole entry room and like a patient room like you do too, like just open space. But I appreciate that. What I will say is at the center for a lot of years, at some point, I knew 12 out of the 15 people in the room. Mm-hmm. So when I knew 12 out of 15 people in the room that had developed relationships for over a long time, then I actually did still feel that kind of intimacy and even the ability to have people know what they were doing and go over and work with someone individually.
Yeah, you're very active. Groups. You get up off of your space and you move around. So I get what you're saying. Yes.
But what I would also say is that is not so much the case anymore. As I was saying, like it seems like even less of the percentage, like 1 out of 10 people are interested in a relationship. You see, people aren't.
Right.
I agree with you that the relationships are what make the yoga happen. One of my teachers would say, it happens in the mutual friendship that exists between two people.
Yes.
And so I am in complete agreement, but that's what I've had to kind of admit to myself, is that a lot of people who are coming to the yoga centers, they're not coming for that. Mm. And I'm starting to think that the people who are most interested or on board for that aren't going to the yoga centers. Like when I'm at my school pickup getting my daughter, and I talk to the fellow parents and they're like, oh, you do yoga? And they don't even think I don't even match the image of a yoga teacher to them. And then they say, oh, well, I've got this back pain. Would it help? And I'm like, yes, I think it might. And but like those people aren't going to the yoga center that's 5 minutes away that I teach at 2 times a week or whatever. They're intimidated to go to that yoga center, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's why I find at my center too, is some people just cannot walk in the door because they're not really ready to have that kind of intimacy or that kind of relationship. They're afraid of what they might find out. There's some people that I know personally that I've invited. I mean, it's an open invitation. Come see me. at Full Circle Yoga, and they just cannot bring themselves to do it. I figure that's fine. I mean, there's some things that they have to learn about their personal suffering. Maybe they're going to learn it in a different way, or maybe they're going to get themselves out of suffering with a relationship with somebody else. That's fine too. But the people who walk in my door, they are ready to do something about it. There's something about the center that has an intimacy, that has a light to it, and until you're ready to meet that light and crack open your shell and peel away the layers, that healing is not going to happen. And so I love it when somebody has the courage to walk in the front door of a very small center and inquire about how they can get started. Because there's so many different ways they can get started. They can do energy work, they can do breath work, they can do movement, they can do meditation, but they've got to be ready. And when you go to a big yoga center, you can kind of be a fly on the wall. I mean, I've been to some places just to check it out. Most people are accustomed
to that. That's what they're accustomed to. And when they come to my class and I'm going up to them and interacting with them, they're almost like taken aback.
Yeah. Now, you got to know when you go to Jay Brown's class, you're going to get some eyeball action. You're going to get some FaceTime. You're going to get some inquiry.
Yes.
You know?
Well,
we want to know what it is that they need. Like, how can I help you? And if that question doesn't come across from the teacher, the student doesn't know that anything is going to happen there.
Well, they also don't know. See, to me, it's interesting because it's only partly about like me getting information and knowing who they are or something. It's more about kind of an example where like that's how you figure out your yoga. Like the inquiry is the whole thing. So by me inquiring about them, that's an example of when we want to have a yoga practice, it starts with an inquiry. Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing that I think is really interesting to me is in order to do what you're talking about, and I want to get more into what you're saying, even in terms of like energy and stuff, because I took a look at your book, which was very interesting.
Oh, thank you.
But before we get to that, I want to just spend a little bit more time on like the model and what you did, because there was one other aspect that we didn't talk about, which was this moving from hiring teachers as independent contractors, 1099, or I guess at some centers, they're actually treating them as employees these days. Not many, but I guess a few are.
Yeah.
And sort of doing that thing where the model was, and this is what happened for me, you become a senior teacher, maybe at some other centers, you start to do the numbers and see like, oh, wow, look at how many people are coming to class and look at how much I get of that. So you would open your own place where not only do you get to keep the money from your classes, but you then have other people teach at your center, and you make money off of those classes too. Of course, if you have high
if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, because I was going to say, if you have high overhead, often you don't. I didn't make any money off the classes at Abhyasa. I only survived off the teacher training.
I'm with you on that too.
That was the only way I managed it, especially in the second half of that 10 years there. It was only because of the teacher training. Like I never made money off of the classes, but theoretically the center or the business was making money off of other teachers. And, I always had a very teacher friendly scale that was like, had no cap, so like the more people came, the more teachers made. And it was as fair as I could possibly be. And compared to what I see happening now, it was really fair. But that model is so problematic. And when you start to do memberships and you start to look at it as a business and you want to try to standardize things, you have to then standardize how much the teachers get paid. So you almost want that set $20 or $30 per class, because then you can see it clearly on the books how much it's going to cost you in payroll,
Yes.
And
I was always, we were very generous with teachers. I always wanted to be more generous with teacher pay, and the numbers just weren't there. We just did not get enough people, as my husband would say, butts in the seats. You got to get the butts in the seats.
See, in that model, you do. That's the whole thing. You got to get them in the room. Yeah.
Yes, and that's where the sales came in, and the Groupon and just doing everything that we could think of to get more quantity of people in, then I could afford to pay the teachers what it is that I wanted to pay them. But the numbers were never there. And then we had to take a look. What are people coming here for? Like here to our place, not just any yoga center, but why are people coming here? And then we looked at the target demographic. We looked at what were the needs of the individuals, in general. And that's when it came down to, wow, we are making much more money on teaching people individually, because I live in North Orange County. I mean, this is kind of an affluent area. People are willing to pay for that customized, individualized, service and relationship. Somebody that, you can meet with them privately and at their convenience. Convenience is really important for them. They don't want to have to carve time out of their schedule to go to a preset class. They want to tell you what time they want to be there. Mm-hmm. So we were doing much better with that and the teacher training. And even if all of the group classes were cut, we would still do well. Mm-hmm. But I told my husband,
if you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.